What's up, investigators? Welcome to another episode of Los Archivos de Arkham. Today we're recording episode number 10, season 3, and this is a very special episode. I have down here Egoitz from Scotland.
Hey, hi everyone. And we also have here Pepe from Madrid.
No, on the other side.
And my camera is the other side.
On the other side.
Yeah.
There you go.
Great.
Hello, everyone. And just above me, there's Newman from the US.
Hey everyone, so happy to be here, and we also have Curlin.
Who? Okay.
I don't think we know who that is.
Oh really? Oh, Curlin's from Dragon Ball Z.
Oh,
Yes.
you know.
Okay.
You know.
There's a little problem. We watched the show in Spanish, so that's for us. It's Krillin.
Oh, okay.
Oh, great.
That makes sense.
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant.
With the 3 points here.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, sorry for my awful English. I'm an awful English speaker, so I let my colleagues speak a lot, and I'll stay behind, just in a corner, trying to say nothing. So
Enjoy the show.
You're a better English speaker than I am a Spanish speaker. So
maybe. I don't know. We can try later, MJ. So, if you don't know MJ, it's the chief designer of Arkham Horror LCG, the board game, card game we play a lot. The podcast and the channel is about. We're going to make some interesting questions to MJ, and hope you enjoy the interview. Okay, Egoitz.
We hope they're interested. We hope they're interesting.
Okay, yeah. Well, we try at least.
We just try.
if they're not, I'll just give interesting answers.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
Especially if you don't understand because our accent is so bad.
It'll be fine.
Okay.
All right, so I guess the first question would be how are you guys doing the team? I mean, because with all the stuff that's going on, and
Right.
especially in the US, and I guess you guys are working remotely as well. So how's everything? Are you all okay? The team and so on?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's been a hell of a year, and like I think the biggest thing is everything. Our entire workflow is different now than it used to be. We used to have we would all come into the office. It was you could not work from home. You had to be in the office, and it was this great sort of like collaborative work environment where everyone was in the same room, like bouncing ideas off of each other and that sort of thing. And all of our everything that we had was like server side, like everything, all of our databases and everything were all there. So now we're all at home using different, either like our home computer or our work computer, and we don't have that environment anymore. Like obviously we still communicate as much as possible, but it's a lot harder to like just be chatting all the time.
Yeah.
And like it's a lot harder to connect to all of our network, basically, of like our databases and our servers and all of our stuff. So yeah, it's been really tough. Like it has not been easy. And obviously there's pros to working at home, like being able to just like work in pajamas, but I miss the office a lot.
No, me too.
For sure.
So do
Yeah.
I. I'm
Yeah,
struggling.
I can't stand working from home.
No, it's tricky. And I imagine for you guys that it really is a teamwork where you need, as you said, you need to bounce ideas and you need to discuss. So you need to be kind of have a constant relation, like a conversation. And I imagine for beta testing, every time you need to test something, it must be difficult because you're not there. I remember
Yeah.
you mentioned the other day in the interview with the Great Old Ones.
Sorry, Egoitz. Did the Great Old Ones pay for this announcement? No?
The promotion.
The promotion?
They did not,
Right.
although Base Odin is one of our Patreons, so
Okay,
that
perfect.
was fun.
Kinda
That
did,
was
yeah.
fun. So you did mention that Wednesdays were your beta testing day, that you used
Right.
to eat pizza. I'm going to ask you about your favorite pizza. You know that, right? that's a must question. So how do you do that? How do you manage to do the testing while you are remote? That must be tricky.
Yeah, it's been really tough. Mostly we rely on a lot of our external testers, external meaning testers who are not local, to just test amongst themselves, like if they live together or they're just playing solo. So we're getting a lot more solo testing. We're getting a lot less. Like testing between groups like we used to, where like one group would live up here and another group lived over here, and they'd meet up and they'd test. But we're not getting as much of that anymore, so it's been difficult. It's definitely been like a learning process that we have to get through. There have been a few groups who have actually play tested, like with cameras and everything, but that's very tough, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a bit of a complicated setup for playing together.
Right. Yeah.
It is, especially if you need to test a scenario in multiplayer, like for 3-4 players, like with a high number of investigators. That must be even trickier because you really need to have everybody connected and like visualizing exactly the same. So it must be tricky, and missing the pizza on Wednesdays.
Yes, the pizza is the most important part.
Yeah.
One of our cast members, Alfred, he is a pizza lover, and he said you cannot forget asking MJ what is the favorite pizza.
I mean, okay, so I like spicy food, and I like sausage and meat in general. So like a spicy sausage with like sun-dried tomato or peppers or like something like that. That sounds really good. The place that we always used to order from, they would just like, they had crazy concoctions.
Ooh.
They had like all kinds of different creative pizzas that they would make. So usually it's not even like what's my favorite. It's like, oh, this is different. And you just like order something random from it.
Oh, sounds good.
Right. Yeah. It all sounds good.
I eat any pizza. Just give me pizza. I don't mind the flavor. Put anchovies, pineapple, anything.
If it has cheese sauce and meat, then I like it.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, you could say that about everything.
Right. Yeah. It's true.
Okay.
We wanted to ask you a bit about your beginning as a designer, where everything comes from. Because you did mention, I think, a couple of times that your father was a game designer, right?
Right.
And does your vocation come from your childhood, or maybe inspired by your father's work? Or did you used to play a lot at home? Because I play a lot with my kids. I try to make them be gamers like daddy.
Yeah. My dad had a huge influence on me growing up. He was a board game designer, and he also made games for Atari. So for both of those reasons, my household was like filled with games, and like we would always get like the new console, like Super Nintendo or whatever, like the day it came out, because he saw the value in them. So that was pretty lucky for me. And he also used to keep all of these components in the basement, like a huge shelf of just like meeples and like roads and like random stuff. And so yeah, it was pretty easy for me to just tinker around and create stuff. And I've been kind of making my own games since like middle school. None of them were good, obviously, but like, when I was a kid, I would make my own games, and I would be like, Dad, look, I made this game. So yeah, I would say that was a huge like a huge nudge in that direction. Yeah.
He must be proud for all you have achieved. I mean, I guess.
Yeah. He tells me he is.
Well, you said that you are not a good designer. Maybe you were not when you started, but you are a brilliant designer. Now we are hooked in this game, so definitely. So, what about your career, your professional career? What did you study? That's one of our patrons was asking. What steps do you follow to arrive to this point today?
Yeah, academically, I had a really strange, contorted sort of history. I started off in undergrad studying science, astronomy mostly. And then I started studying East Asian studies, so like Japanese, Chinese, Japanese history, language, all of that. I got really into that. I actually traveled to Japan and studied abroad in Japan for a while. And I thought that was going to be like the direction that I took. And I almost actually stayed in Japan, but I ended up coming home. And then I went to law school after that and did the 3 years of law school, graduated from law school, passed the bar, and couldn't really get a job because the job market for law was like just terrible when I graduated. It still is pretty bad from what I hear. And I probably could have gotten one just fine if I had stuck with it. But around that time is when the job opening at FFG opened up, and I was already like super into FFG games, and I'd always wanted to like have a career in game design, so I just went with it, and I've never looked back.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong. You started designing fan-made scenarios for Lord of the Ring. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Lord of the Rings came out in 2010, I think. Yeah, 2010. And I immediately I saw the potential for fan-made scenarios, like custom scenarios, because the game was so open-ended in that way. And thankfully, someone, Tom Howard, actually, had created a bunch of templates, like graphic design templates for Lord of the Rings cards. So I grabbed those and I started tinkering around and making my own cards. So it is largely because of Tom Howard, one of the early Mythos busters, that I actually have a job with FFG at all, which is pretty funny.
That's brilliant.
Awesome.
You know how you arrived to FFG. Is it? I think your first like big job was actually designing for Lord of the Rings, right?
Yes. Yeah, I got pretty lucky because, like I said, I was working on those Lord of the Rings scenarios, and when the job opening was posted, it was for specifically Lord of the Rings. So yeah, I got very lucky.
Me. I'm first. Me. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was like, right here.
Here. It's me.
Yep. Here you go.
So how was the switch from Lord of the Rings to suddenly Lovecraft? Because that's a pretty big switch thematically, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, luckily, I'm a big fan of both. Like, I've always been a huge fan of Lord of the Rings, especially like as a kid. When the movies came out, that was like my jam. But I've always been a huge fan of horror, especially like horror games, like horror video games, like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Like, I grew up on that stuff. So thankfully, both were entirely within my wheelhouse. I was completely on board with doing Arkham. Actually, the bigger switch for me was the difference between working on an already established game, because like Lord of the Rings had been out for 2 years when I joined, versus working on a game from the ground up, like completely from scratch. That was like a huge difference. It was a big hurdle to get over. It was actually very liberating too, because we could just do whatever we wanted. Yeah.
I remember that first presentation you did with Nate French in the Arkham Nights with that projector.
Yeah.
I could see you a bit nervous in front of
I'm so
all the
nervous. You have
audience.
no idea.
I actually watched that video again some months ago, and it was like, wow, this was the beginning, the first presentation, and it was very welcomed by the community. I mean, the gaming community, especially LCG game fans and so on. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that presentation was actually adapted from, it wasn't like exactly the same, but it was adapted from the original presentation that me and Nate used to pitch the game to our executive team. Which fun little fact.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah.
May I ask where the idea come from? Did it came from above? Like we're looking to create an LCG based on the Arkham Files IP, or was it something that you guys were thinking? There was Arkham Horror, the board game, and then there was room to create, design an LCG based on that universe. How did that happen, if I may ask?
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good question. It definitely came from above at first. Like, they saw the potential in Lord of the Rings. They saw that there was this clamor. There was a lot of support for a cooperative card game, and they wanted to do another one. They wanted to do more. And I don't know if you remember, but at one point there was to be a Star Wars cooperative card game that was very similar to the Lord of the Rings one, and that ended up getting scrapped. And it was around that time I think they were testing other ideas. And so when like 2016 rolled around, they actually it was around 2015. They just said, okay, we're gonna do an Arkham cooperative LCG. They decided that, and they basically assigned it to me and Nate. Nate, because he was our senior most like designer as opposed to developer. Like he makes games from scratch. That was like his whole thing. And me, because I was basically like, well, really into the setting, like I said, and like really experienced with cooperative games at that point because I had been working on Lord of the Rings for about 4 years, and Caleb was already continuing with Lord of the Rings, so like he couldn't do it. It just made sense for it to be me and Nate. So yeah, that's pretty much how it started, and luckily it was a project that we were super into, and I kind of made it my baby. You know what I mean? I kind of like took a little bit of ownership of that.
And touch wood that it remains like that. I cannot conceive the game without you, and now without Jeremy.
No. But the history is going to repeat, Goitz. Now Jeremy is going to leave Arkham Horror to design a new Star Wars LCG cooperative game.
This is our dream. Because he was in Destiny, and we've always been hoping that at some point in the future will be a Star Wars based LCG. Well, let's hope Jeremy takes over.
Who knows?
So I think it was actually a very good choice, knowing that you had an interest in horror and you had a background with horror video games and so on. Did you know Lovecraft beforehand? I imagine so. You have read Lovecraft and so on. May I ask which is your favorite Lovecraft work, if I may ask?
I think I change my answer to this every time I get asked it.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I think my favorite is the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, just because it is so out there and like mystical and wondrous. It's not like straight horror, at least until the very end, and then it takes a sudden like turn for the horrific. I think that one's probably my favorite. I feel like it's the best written one. It has like, I don't know, an arc, like it's got character development. I just like that one a lot. But I think a lot of them are really close. The Mountains of Madness is up there for sure. It's like in my top 3. And I think probably my second might be Dreams in the Witch House.
It's one of my favorites as well.
Yeah.
Actually, 2 of those have already been seen in the game. Well, we've seen Kadath,
right?
And we've also seen the house, Dreams of the House of the Witch, in the Circle Undone. So hope that at some point we will see Antarctica in the future. Hopefully. I think that's one of the sets that everybody is waiting. It was like same as Innsmouth. Innsmouth was like, it's a fan favorite. Like, and I think everybody is waiting for Mountains of Madness, especially now that Chaosium has announced that they're gonna do a reprint of their big source book. I think it's 500 pages or so on for Call of Cthulhu.
Beyond the Mountains of Madness, that one.
Yes, that one. Yeah, because that's super expensive in the second-hand market, like over 200 quid. And I think Chaosium is planning to create, adapt it for 7th edition, and they are reprinting it now. Well, Git, we know where everything comes from now, a bit more. We have a question from another of our Patreons. Since you are a designer and a board game designer, if you have to say one board game that you would have loved to have designed, which one would that be?
That's a tough one. That I would love to have designed, like from the ground up, or that I would love to make expansions for, or something.
Well, both.
Well, let's see. That's tough. My favorite board game of all time is Twilight Imperium.
Okay.
That is probably the game that got me into Fantasy Flight. Like I'd always been into board games, but my dad is more of a Euro game kind of person. Like he loves like Agricola and Catan and stuff like that. I saw Twilight Imperium in a Walden Books in like when I was when I was like 14 or so, and I like begged him to buy it for me. And I think that was the first Fantasy Flight game that I ever played. So I think that would probably be my choice of like game that I would love to do something for or with. I really loved Android, the original Android board game. I thought that game was fantastic, and I would have loved to been a part of that as well.
Okay.
Nice. Well, did you have any chance to participate, or at least to have a sneak peek on the expansion for Twilight Imperium, the one that is going to be released shortly?
Yeah. Actually, I had a little bit of a hand in that.
Nice.
So like excuse me, at FFG, we have with any of our internal IPs, so like Twilight Imperium, Arkham Horror, Legend of the Five Rings, we have individual story groups, which are groups of people who are essentially filling a IP contributing role. And I am in the story group for Twilight Imperium for no reason other than I love it so much that like I'm knowledgeable about it to an extent that is helpful sometimes. So yeah, when it came time to brainstorming some of the new factions that are in the expansion, I definitely had a little bit of a hand in that. I can't point to any particular one that is like mine. Although I think at one point I definitely said that I wanted to just have like eldritch monstrosities. And I think that probably led to the Volwraith cabal.
Nice.
That's awesome. So it's no wonder that the Twilight Imperium just pull you in. That cover is just, it wants you to play it.
Yes, absolutely.
And it was the first big game from Fantasy Flight, right? It was.
I think it was one of the first, if not the first. Yeah, it was enormous. I mean, even when it was the first.
Yeah.
Because before that, Fantasy Flight in like the early days, it did mostly like comic books and stuff. And it wasn't even. It was a producer of said books and distributor. It wasn't like in the board game industry until Twilight Imperium First Edition.
Wow, look where we are now.
You're right. Yeah.
Pepe, you want to go with the next question?
Yeah, let's go to another area. So just recently we saw a tweet where Fantasy Flight was looking for new cultural consultants and sensitivity readers, which I imagine would work for introducing new characters with more diverse backgrounds into any games from the Fantasy Flight.
IP universe.
IPs.
Right.
Thank you. So, can we expect a larger effort for inclusion in the future for the Arkham files, like we saw in the starter pack investigators, for example?
Right. So I definitely can't confirm whether like new investigators might show up in the future. Obviously, I would love to do more, but that's sort of a bigger decision, and I can't really say one way or the other. But
maybe enemies or allies or whatever.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, what I can say is this is something that we wanted to do for a long time. It doesn't really point to any change of plans internally so much as it's something that like I think all board game companies should be doing. Just no matter what they're working on, they should always be hiring someone to take a look at all of their stuff and make sure that everything is good and not going to be, offensive or a problem or anything like that. So yeah, it's just going to be helpful all around for all of our products.
Yeah, it's awesome to finally be able to play with someone that's not a guy in a trench coat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Guys in a trench coats are cool, but
yes, we already have enough guys in trench coats.
Yeah,
Definitely.
there's enough options. So
Right.
how do you feel the board game industry is evolving with, I guess, inclusivity, sensitivity, and all of these matters?
I mean, I can definitely tell that it's gotten better, but there's still always room for improvement. I
Yes,
mean,
of course.
yeah. I mean, just within our games, for sure, we've made a huge effort to diversify our cast of characters and also the places that you might travel to, and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Representation is always a good thing.
Right. Yeah.
I was gonna say, since you mentioned the places we traveled to, I was gonna say
Ah.
we want to see Europe again soon.
I want to see Europe in real life.
Oh, come over!
No.
Yes,
Come over.
come over.
You are invited. Come on. Actually,
Excuse me, Goetz. Scotland is not Europe anymore. Sorry.
True. Not for long, hopefully. So yeah, I was gonna say, we were talking earlier that we've only seen Europe in Venice, in Carnevale, and we also seen Paris,
Right.
and I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Mont Saint Michel.
Yeah, Mont Saint Michel. Yeah.
France in general. Yeah, true. Yeah, hopefully. Actually, David has been designing a fan-made scenario in Madrid.
Yeah.
Nice.
In the 1920s, yes.
In the
1920s Madrid. That's cool.
Yeah, there were, here in Madrid there was a very special school called how does it called?
It was artists, writers, and
yes, famous
artists.
like Dalí, García Lorca, Buñuel, all disciplines. And it's about it, the scenario, using the old maps of Madrid. And I think if Fantasy Flight brings Arkham Horror LCG to Madrid, would be a great idea.
I'll keep it in mind.
Wink, wink.
Or Galicia. Galicia is a very famous place in Spain, famous about the witches and everything supernatural.
Actually, we had a question about that.
Okay.
Sort of.
Okay.
Because Galicia has a lot of influence from Celtic mythology, and it has a very, very cool folklore, actually. We've seen a lot in the recent packs, a lot of cards hinting at mythology from Egypt. We've seen a lot of like the Riastrad and the Gish.
Yeah.
Did you look at what? So how did you come up with your influences for the cards?
Yeah, that's a really good observation, actually. So that was mostly because it was almost a reaction to the fact that so much of the Guardian cards were very like Christian focused, right? Like Sister Mary. You have like the Holy Rosary, the Rite of Sanctification, all of that stuff. So we wanted to show that like the concept of blessing and cursing doesn't have to come from one like aspect of mythology or one religion. It can come from all over. And in fact, more likely in the Arkham IP, all of those things are maybe like coming from the same sort of sense of fortune and fate and misfortune and ill fate, right? So yeah, we looked at a bunch of different things, and obviously we can't include everything because it would be hundreds and hundreds of cards if we did. We kind of just narrowed it down to the ones that were inspiring or that like lent themselves well to card effects. So the idea of like, you know, a cursed attack, an attack that turns you into a monster, right? That sort of thing. Riastrad made the most sense for that because that's like what it is. And Gase in particular also is like, very. I did a lot of research into that sort of thing.
So these are not kind of clues of your next cycle. No.
They may or may not be. Who knows?
Okay, we have a lot of time.
Find out.
You know, we think a lot about it. Yeah, we are a channel and a podcast about only one game, so we have a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah, whenever a pack comes out, we're like, is this a hint for something?
Yeah.
We've
What are
done
they
all the
saying here?
Yeah, numbers around that head, matching things.
Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're just completely out of left field.
Okay.
Yeah, I
never
remember.
really know until it's over.
I think it was at the end of the Dream Eaters or during Dream Eaters that there was some think a couple of 3 cards that were showing like a snowy environment, like a frozen, and everybody was hinting, yeah,
Right.
Monsters of Madness are coming, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was his mouth, which was even better.
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah. The player cards are taken from such a smattering of places and people. I wouldn't read into that too much. Although sometimes I do seed mechanical previews, like the bonded cards at the end of
Yeah.
Circle
Yeah.
Undone, for example.
Okay.
It's lovely to see how the different cultures would interpret these blessed and
Right.
cursed things. It's really cool, and it
Cool.
melts really well with the game. Really,
I'm glad you like it.
But,
Yeah.
but it's a hard work because you have to learn before apply that knowledge to the card game.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
so about this, there's a lot of research and a lot of work before designing even a single card. Do you work in tandem with Jeremy with the research and the narrative aspect and all of these things when designing a new cycle?
Yeah, it depends on it's kind of evolved over time. It depends on what products we happen to be working on at any given moment. Like when we were working on the investigator starter decks, for example, there wasn't really a lot of narrative content in those products. It was mostly just player cards, so a lot of mechanical stuff. So we kind of split it by character. We said, all right, you would take these characters, I'll take these characters, and we almost kind of like worked in a vacuum and then like came together at the end. When we were working on Innsmouth, by the time that he was really starting to work on in Arkham full time, the story outline for Innsmouth had already kind of been done, and I was writing the full narrative. So Innsmouth, all of the narrative is written by me, but there are scenarios within the Innsmouth cycle that he created, and he kind of just like fit them into the narrative that I had already written. For future stuff, it was a lot more collaborative from the ground up, where we kind of worked together to figure out what the story outline was going to look like, that sort of thing.
I think it makes sense since he was coming from competitive games, and
Right.
designing starter decks probably was an area where he would feel more comfortable, because at the end of the day, it's just designing player cards, and that's something that I think it was in his nature as a world champion and,
Right.
and so on. Yeah, it was when we heard that Jeremy was joining, I was like, wow, brilliant. So we have like the mastermind one side, which will be you, and we have also Jeremy, who it's, I'm sure it's going to be very good designing player cards. So it was like, it's going to be a good team.
Yeah. He has a really good eye for mechanics and a really good eye for deck building, and he will find like combinations of cards that I would not have thought of, and
I remember his nickname was Went Infinite Again.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to note he's been sort of a part of the behind the scenes part of Arkham since the very beginning. He was a playtester all the way back in the core set. He's been instrumental in shaping the way that the game flows, even all the way back in 2016. So it was kind of a natural fit for him to join the team because he already knew the game in and out. It wasn't like he had to learn the game then, you know what I mean? So yeah, like the Went Infinite again, that was all the way back in, I think, Carcosa with like an early version of Safina, and he wasn't working on the game then. He was just a playtester, but geez.
He would spot those little fails in design. Okay.
Right.
About the about the starter packs. That's one particular pack which is always sold out in Spain, at least, which was Stella. So kudos for that. And she just opens her playstyle was already there. She just opened a new way to work with it. So kudos for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I love Stella. She's a lot of fun.
I'm playing Stella through Innsmouth, and it's a very fun investigator to play. I enjoy it a lot. So that's it. Thank you. I love it.
When we saw her, we thought it fits perfect with the survivor class. It's like perfect, and it's actually quite curious to see that it's the only starter deck that it's completely sold out in Spain. You just cannot get it. It's sold out
I wonder
everywhere.
why that's the case. Yeah. I hope that everyone in Spain is able to get it soon.
Yeah. There have been, I guess, producing the packs for a translated game. It must be difficult. I mean, they must measure the quantities and so on. So sometimes we've seen that certain packs have been missing for quite a long time until they are produced again. So it must be different from the English version, definitely.
Yeah, I know the quantities are different. I also know that with COVID still going on, distribution is really tough right now. There's like containers that are just like stuck in port and stuff like that. It's a whole thing. I'm pretty far removed from that entire aspect of the business, so I don't have to deal with a lot of that. But it is frustrating to hear when someone wants something and they can't get it. I wish that I could somehow do something about that. I'll just order 1,000 employee copies and send them.
Okay.
There must be a ritual or something for summoning new packs.
So many new packs.
Right.
Did you get Egoit's A Light in the Fog pack?
I didn't get it yet. I mean, no, A Light in the Fog for some reason it's not out yet in the UK. I think due to Brexit. So we were told by our local gaming store that it was going to be released probably this week, but it didn't arrive yet. So I guess we'll have to wait another week more. Wait, that's it. Since we're talking about design, may I ask, this might be quite a long question for you to respond, but if you could summarize, breaking down the design process, starting how first you decide the theme for the cycle, and where do you get inspiration from, and so on, and from there, and how long roughly does it take to have like a first draft of the logs or the first scenarios? I know more or less that each mythos pack, each scenario takes around 6 months to test. I think I heard you talking about 6 months roughly.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
So in the whole design process, if you have to do it like a summarizing, not like a breakdown, how would that be?
So it's kind of changed a little bit over time as the game has grown, and I've kind of been given more and more creative control over time of like choosing where to go next and what the scenarios entail and that sort of thing. Early on, we kind of like very early in the game's lifetime, we outlined a few cycles. We said like, okay, well, we should definitely go to Dunwich. Dunwich is a really beloved location that's right near Arkham. We should definitely do, I want to do Haster and Carcosa because that was like my favorite like works of fiction outside of Lovecraft. And then kind of like, I think those were the first two that we really fully outlined like all the way back in like 2016, along with a few of the standalone scenarios as well. After that, it was a lot more like, okay, what do we want the next cycle to be? We have like a visioning step where we create like an outline for it. We create like a pitch for what are the new mechanics going to be. So I would write down like, okay, in this expansion, there might be a mechanic where you seal chaos tokens on cards. Whoa, that's totally new. And we'll talk about it. And Nate and the executive team will give their input. Be like, well, I'm concerned that this might do this, or this might be a bad idea, or this might be a really good idea, or whatever. Our story team will weigh in on like whether there are any issues with the story outline, that kind of thing, and we'll just go from there. Usually from that step to first draft of like a scenario, like one scenario, is just a matter of weeks. But that first draft is usually very, very rough. And yeah, it's kind of that way for each scenario. It'll take a few weeks to create it, and then it'll take a few weeks to refine it, and then from there it'll go to playtesting, and it'll be in playtesting for a long time.
Cool. So
Yeah.
can we say that when a deluxe box is released, you probably have already in mind what the next cycle will be, right?
Further than that, yeah. If
further. Wow.
right, so like when I'm trying to answer the question without like actually spoiling anything. Usually we're at least a full year ahead
Okay.
of whatever's being released. So the stuff that I'm working on right now won't see the light of day, like won't even be announced for like a full year, probably,
Wow.
if not longer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because also production takes a long time. Production is 6 to 9 months. So whenever something gets announced, like the product that just got announced today, for example,
Yes.
I've been done with that for over like almost a year,
Ooh.
for example.
It must
I can understand now better your latest tweet about. I was so excited to talk about
Right?
it.
Yeah. Like, and then sometimes when I go back and play some of those things that we designed so long ago, I'm like, I don't even remember this. So long ago.
Okay, MJ, how can you avoid the temptation of saying anything about the new product?
Oh, geez. How do I avoid the temptation?
Yeah.
Usually the threat of retribution. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I try to engage as much as possible with the people who do know what's coming, like my playtesters and my inner circle, so that I have people I can vent to, or I have people I can talk to about that stuff and rant about how excited I am about it, and then I get it all out of my system.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, next.
Let's go to the next question. Following up with the design process, is there a part of the development process that you maybe not quite enjoyed at first, but now are taking a liking to it, or vice versa?
Yeah. Well, maybe not a step that I didn't like at first, but a step that I didn't know whether I would like it or not. When I first joined, I really enjoyed the initial design step of just like getting ideas on paper, iterating, testing it, like trying again, doing changes, little tweaks here and there, that sort of thing. What I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I do is the final step of like actually putting it all together on the computer, right? And like seeing it laid out for the first time with artwork and with all the graphic design and everything. It's like really satisfying. It's like viscerally satisfying to see like the finished product. Yeah. I didn't think that would actually be fun. I thought it was going to be like grunt work, just like, all right, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, but it's actually a lot of fun.
Print.
Yeah.
Right.
As Egoit said, I was designing a fan-made scenario in Madrid, and I understand what you're saying, because it starts with a lot of interesting ideas. I will do that, I will do the other thing, and make them match. And you have a lot of hard work in the middle, with a lot of time spent I don't know how to say, but working hard. And finally, you go to the Photoshop and put in the artwork, make everything fits, and it's the best moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Okay, Egoitz, come on.
Do you design using Photoshop? Is that the tool that you guys use?
We use InDesign.
InDesign, okay.
Yeah.
Works as well for him.
Yeah, because I work for Adobe. It's just a fact. So since we're talking about the design of the card itself, one of the questions that one of our patrons asked, how do you choose the art for the cards? Is the art coming from a pool, or sometimes can you request certain art or certain artist? And then the next question would be, what is your favorite card art? So if you will have to choose one or a couple, let's say.
On the
How would-
spot.
Well, the first part of the question's easy to answer. It's actually very interesting too. It's kind of a mix of both. So we have a pool of art, which we call pickup art. That's what we call it. That is taken from previous games in the Arkham universe, right? So there'll be a piece of art that was commissioned years ago for like Eldritch Horror or Mansions of Madness or Arkham Horror, the board game. And we have a giant folder, which I've just labeled like MJ's pickup folder, right? And we'll go through and we'll find pieces that work for each cycle, right? So when we have a new cycle, we'll be like, okay, what are all the art pieces that make sense for this cycle? We'll put it all in a big folder, and that'll be like our repository of art that we can use. We don't have to though. And in fact, we leave about half of it on the table because some of it's just like pretty old, some of it just doesn't work for the story that we're trying to tell, whatever. There's numerous reasons why we might or might not use a piece. Everything else that we do, we commission. And when every time we commission a piece, I write a description of what that is going to be. So for example, anytime there's a new thing, right? So like the entirety of the Mont Saint Michel scenario, for example, that was all new art, all of it, because we had never depicted Mont Saint Michel before. So every single location, every single act and agenda, actually that's not true. I think there's one pickup piece in there. But anyway, a lot of it is something that I wrote, I did research on. I was like, okay, in Mont Saint Michel, there's this grand abbey and it looks like this. Here's reference pictures, all of that stuff. And we'll send that to our art director, who right now is Jeff Lee Johnson, who you can find on Twitter.
Okay.
And he'll edit the art description. He will choose an artist that makes the most sense for that piece of art, because he works so closely with those artists. He knows them all really well, and he'll then take it over from there. And usually from that point forward, it's all him or the other art directors, Deborah Garcia, whoever. And I'll typically get to see the finished product like all the way at the end, or I'll see a sketch if they have a question, like, hey, does this work for what you're doing? That sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. It especially, like, all of those tarot pieces that you're seeing now that we've been like teasing all week. I wrote all of those descriptions.
Wow.
Because I'm like really into tarot cards. So I did a lot of research into like, okay, how can we take this tarot card that is traditionally depicted this way and like Arkhamify it, right? Like make it spooky, that sort of thing. I'm really proud of those and how they turned out.
I personally love her art.
She's so good.
Amazing. And now
so good.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, Pepe is also a big fan of her art.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. And also the art style, sort of article, and it really stands out from the rest of the art of the game.
Right.
And makes it quite unique. I love it.
Yeah, me too.
We cannot wait to see the new tarot cards.
Yeah, the new tarot deck. Yeah.
The new deck.
Yeah, now it's a deck by itself. No, it's not a plan card. It's not an act card. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Okay. So should we already address the elephant-sized tarot card in the room, or?
Sure.
It was just a coincidence that it was only today when the article went online, and when we saw it, I think people was expecting it, because you've been teasing, especially with the artist every day at midnight. Actually, it was a new tweet. I think those were programmed probably, with the art and with certain lines hinting what was coming. And suddenly there had not been any entry today, and we're like, hey, today is the day the article is gonna come. Very nice touch to choose the witching hour for the Circle Undone. Just because I think it was midnight Central Time, right? Every day.
Yeah, every day.
That was a very nice touch. So yeah, and today we read the article and we were like, wow, this is amazing. Especially that, from my point of view, at least that deck of 22 tarot cards that are kind of objective. They seem to be like a kind of an objective that if you achieve that, you will get some reward. If you don't, you'll be penalized somehow.
Some of them work that way. Some of them just provide like passive benefits or hindrances.
Mhm.
Some of them affect you right at the beginning of the game. Like it'll be like, oh, at the beginning of the game you get this bonus, like whatever. Or at the beginning of the game you get this penalty, and that'll like affect your game.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how would you perform a tarot reading with these Neo cards? Is it before the scenario, or?
So there's actually 4 different kinds of readings that you can do. I won't describe precisely what they are because I think I want to wait for players to see for themselves. But there's 4 different readings of like increasing complexity. Just like with real life, when you do a tarot reading in real life, you could do a really simple one where you just draw 1 or 2 or 3 cards or something, or you could do a really complex reading like the Celtic cross spread, that sort of thing. So I kind of wanted to recreate that same thing with the tarot cards and like have different kinds of readings that you could do. And what's cool is they're all optional. All of them are completely optional. You can choose to use it or not. And you can even create your own readings and like share them online. If you think of a cool way that like you want to use the tarot cards, they're very flexible. You can kind of use them in whatever way you want to, as long as it's balanced. Or even if it's not balanced, you could just like, you know what, the game's too hard, I want to pull 5 tarot effects and have all of them be upright. Like you can do that if you want to. Yeah.
That sounds lovely. I can't wait to finally play with it.
Yeah, T3Ep10, Circle Undone is, for me at least, with Carcosa, my favorite cycle. I like the narrative behind. I like the
theme.
The theme, the clash between the different powers trying to. I love that. And it reminds me a lot to the actual role-playing game. And actually, one of the characters, Carl Stanford, was already a character in Chaosium's Call of Cthulhu. It's only a wee difference, just one single letter from Sanford to Stanford. And I was like, yeah, that's a nice touch. That's also, which funny thing, it's Sandy Peterson's real name. So we were like, wow, that's, I was surprised to see that. It was a nice touch. You didn't tell us which is your favorite art.
Oh, that's right. So this is really tough. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if this is my favorite.
Okay.
But the one that comes to mind immediately is Jacqueline's signature card, Arbiter of Fate, where you see like it's a close up of her eye and you see the strings of fate and one of them is snapping. I adore that piece. I think it's really cool.
Nice.
I like any of the pieces where I get to write, like a person's mind is both figuratively and literally exploding. You know what I mean? Those are really fun.
I can't imagine the faces of the artist.
Right? Just like, okay.
Let's go.
Right.
My eldest son loves the art. He's always having a look at the cards, and he was like, "Wow, that's creepy." Yeah, well, you like it? Yeah, I like it. His 8-year-old one, he's so into it.
Right.
Okay. Okay, Egoitz. I don't want to MJ spoiled anything, but there's an art book coming. Will we see this tarot art in the book?
I actually don't know.
Okay.
I have seen the book. I know what the contents of it are, but I don't remember if they're in it.
Okay.
So, sorry.
No,
So maybe.
Doesn't matter. Don't worry.
Must say when we got the Circle Undone, I usually play with my girlfriend. So when I told her that the Newswood cycle was announced, she was okay, cool. And I said, "It's got witches." And then she went, wow, she went berserk. It's an
Nice.
awesome game. I enjoy it very much.
Awesome.
About the return to boxes, how do you usually choose which cards would get an upgrade or a downgrade?
Um, we usually try out a bunch of things and then we'll cut options at the end. That's kind of how we design player cards in general.
Mhm.
I'll usually design like 10 to 20% more cards than you'll ever get to see, and we'll just cut the ones that don't make it at the end. For the upgrades, usually it's one of two things. It's either a beloved card that everyone really loves, and so they would love to see a new version of it, or a card that really didn't hit the mark or wasn't very powerful, and therefore players would love to see a new version of it. The cards that are just kind of fine on their own, we don't usually do a new version of. It's usually one or the other.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right.
So I think this is the return to box that differs the most from the product.
Right.
Because we also got new cards with the new tarot cards and a new accessory actually.
Yeah.
Was this planned before finishing the Circle Undone, or was it just something at the moment?
It was not planned, that's for sure. It was kind of a two-part thing. One, because I knew that players really wanted new tarot cards. Like that was sort of like we all love this new slot and we all love the way that they work, but there's just not enough of them, right? So I was like, okay, we should add more tarot cards, and it makes more sense to do it here than to do it in like a new cycle or something like that. So that was one. Two, the Arkham, I think it was the board game, third edition, or maybe it was Eldritch. I don't remember. One of the two had already commissioned some new tarot art.
Oh,
In particular, some of the ones that are in the article, like I think the star might have been. I don't remember actually which ones were pick up and which ones were commissioned. But the point is, I had some tarot art already there, so I was like, okay, like I'll just do it. Yeah,
Go for it. Yeah.
right.
happy
made
coinciding.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sometimes the different Arkham teams, like the LCG and the board game and the Mansions of Madness or whatever, we will work together and like have a plan for that sort of thing. And then sometimes it just works out and we're like, oh, cool. All right.
It's also they're quite different from the original ones. Also, they have sort of more, how could I say it, more crazier effects, I guess.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're higher level, and they're not just like +1 to a stat. They delve more into what that class does, or at least one of the things that class does. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're a lot more interesting.
It makes you think a lot about deck building. Like maybe with this card, I have another accessory asset or accessory slot or arcane slot. It twists the game up quite a bit.
Yeah, I think these what I found with tarot cards like not in playtesting, after playtesting, was that players often used them as like a capstone for their deck, like the final consideration of like, do I want to add a tarot? Sure, I do a lot of this, so I'll add this tarot. So I kind of wanted these to feel the same way. Like, does my deck have lots of tanking, soaking, health, and sanity? Okay, maybe I'll put this tarot in. But now there's this added layer of you could also just do a full crazy tarot deck where you have like 12 tarot cards in your deck or something. I don't know. Like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
I want to go ham with Lola.
Mm-hmm.
One of the allies. I was just having a look at the card now. Erin McCowid. I live in
I believe
Scotland.
it's pronounced McKay.
McKay. Yeah, I live in Scotland and I cannot even pronounce it.
I hope I'm not wrong, but I think that's when I looked it up. That's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, so she's a witch, and it's I think it's in Celtic mythology also. Witches have been in most of the mythologies, really. the area in Spain where I come from, in the north, in the Basque Country. Pepe was mentioning Galicia, but the Basque Country as well has history of witchcraft. Well, I like that it's Scottish origin surname, and the name itself. I think the name is Irish Gaelic for Ireland. I think Erin means Ireland in Irish Gaelic. But it was nice when I saw it. I was like, oh, nice. And another red haired. For some reason, it's many characters are red haired or ginger. Which is cool. One of our patrons always says, "Oh, another ginger character." So, actually, when you were mentioning earlier about design, how you choose some cards to make it maybe different versions for the returns. One of the questions from one of our Patreon came to my mind, who was thinking about Henry one. Henry one has always been an ally that not many people uses, and he, in a funny way, he was saying, is the word conspiracy in the conspiracy of Innsmouth just everything around the concept of making Henry one better just by including extra tokens in the chaos bag?
That's funnier. That is not the conspiracy.
Okay.
That is not the titular conspiracy. But I will say that when we, like I said before, like we work ahead a lot, right? So there's sometimes some overlap between like various cycles. So we had this idea for bless and curse tokens in our mind all the way back when we were working on Henry Wan. And so it kind of was this thing where it's like, well, he's gonna get better. He's gonna get way better when bless and curse tokens come in, whenever that happens to be down the line. So we didn't want to like call it out explicitly, but yeah, that was like one card where we were like, yeah, we know that's gonna get really good.
So that's not a conspiracy.
That's not the conspiracy. No,
Okay.
it might be a conspiracy.
Or maybe that's what you want us to think.
You got me.
Okay, following up with designing cards and all of the design process, is there a particular class you feel like bolder or like taking bigger risks while designing?
Yeah, actually two, for different reasons. So one is rogues. For rogues, I feel like rogues are the class that like to take big risks. So it's more fun playing a rogue if there are these really bombastic, really powerful cards with big drawbacks, or they're really expensive, or they have lots and lots of experience points, that sort of thing. And also like rogues break the rules a little bit. They cheat, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one is mystics. Mystics, we can do some like weird, like paradoxical kind of effects that they work because it's a mystic card. You know what I mean? Like time warp, where it's like time warp could not have been in any other class. And I'm so glad that time warp exists, even though it's a pain.
Yeah.
Because it's just so cool. It's just like, yep, undo everything that just happened. You're like, oh, all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, both are classes that sort of play with the game.
Right. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
been-
I feel like rogues can sort of like cheat, and mystics can kind of cheat reality. You know what I mean? Yeah. Take your rule book and throw it out the window. You're playing mystic, you know?
Look at the FAQ.
Right.
It's nice how having these new blessed and cursed tokens open up an option to recreate cards that we already seen, similar effects like the Rite of Seeking and so on, Shivering, and create versions that interact with those tokens. So that open up a different way of playing. So I think that helps with not increasing the power creep, because it's really opening a different way of playing. I think it's nice instead of always creating cards that necessarily need to be not necessarily more powerful than previous ones, but they need to offer you something so you want to play with them. But just the whole way that you design the in Innsmouth the blessed and cursed tokens so they can open up different ways of playing, I think that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I hope to see something like that in the future, like having just opened different ways of playing.
Thank you.
That was actually very nice. I have a question. Then, because every time we see a new scenario, we always wonder, okay, how are they gonna hit us in this one? So, which are gonna be the hurdles? Is it gonna be like increasing the doom with I don't know enemies that add doom, or just that make that doom clock faster? Is it gonna be by just adding a bunch of enemies, like a huge amount of enemies, like I don't know, swarms and so on, or enemies like we've seen in Innsmouth, many that deal damage or horror automatically, or the encounter that can hit you with clues, make you lose clues, or make you lose cards from your deck, and then punish you if you run out of cards. So how do you design that? How do you think on the encounter deck? Because that, I know you like that. I think that's one of the parts that you like punishing players and preparing those hurdles. And actually,
A little bit of masochism or sadism, rather.
and you designed the keeper that mode,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, how is the approach to that? How do you think on what's gonna be the way I'm gonna hit them in this scenario?
So typically, and this is sort of a lesson that we learned from Lord of the Rings, that like the encounter deck is like the person that you're playing against, right? If they're the person you're sitting across from, then they need a win condition. In the same way that like in any other competitive game, your deck would have its win condition, like the thing that it's trying to do. So we always take a moment to think about like, okay, how is the scenario trying to win? How is it trying to beat us? Is it just trying to slow us down until we run out of time? Is it trying to speed things up? Is it trying to pull us in different directions, or is it just trying to outright kill us? And usually the answer to that question is kind of just like right there in the narrative. We'll just make a decision based on what's happening. So like in Too Deep, for example, slight spoiler if anyone hasn't played it, but In Too Deep is a scenario where the narrative is very much you're just trying to get from point A to point B. That's it. Like that's the whole scenario. So it makes the most sense for the way that the encounter deck to beat you is to like block you, right? Like physically get in your way and be like, no, you can't get past.
Go back.
Right. And then surround you with enemies and then murder you. So it, or just like stall you until the flood level keeps rising and then you get eliminated. So yeah, usually we'll just look at the narrative and decide, from there, like what the best angle is. Not always what the most efficient angle, but like the most thematic angle from which we can, tear you down.
Actually, that scenario In Too Deep, I think it captures perfectly the that escape from the story in the Shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so like that. Just run, get to the station.
Right. If you spend too much time, you're gonna get swamped.
Totally.
So just one little thing.
Yeah.
We played it for the channel just like a month ago. We got the accursed follower on the second turn. It was such a
Like,
pain.
all on the other end. Oh, that's terrible.
That helps with replayability.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
Yeah. If you're just run the right covenant, I guess.
You have just mentioned that sometimes it's the narrative that makes you think on the mechanic for the encounter deck. I remember in one of, I cannot remember where, but one of the interviews that you gave, you mentioned about that design process, up, down, or down, up. Sometimes you think
Right.
on the mechanic first and then the story around that, and sometimes it's the other way around. You have the story very clear in your mind, and then you need to find the mechanic, how you're going to implement that into the game. Is that an easy process? Does it come naturally, organically in a way, or do you sometimes struggle or get stuck? Like, okay, we got the idea, but we don't know how to put it into the how to create a new mechanic, because at the end of the day, each scenario is a mini game, always
Right.
different. So that's quite tricky from the design point of view.
Yeah. I would say about 90 to 95% of the time it just kind of works out that way, where we already have an idea of like what we want it to be, and so it'll just kind of design itself from there. Or we already have like a cool idea for a mechanic, and so then I'll sit down and I'll try to write like, all right, how can we get this mechanic to work in the story? um and then about the rest of the time, like the other 10% of the time, it is kind of a pain, and we'll usually go through a couple iterations of either, sometimes it's for just a specific card, even it doesn't have to be for like a whole scenario. Sometimes just like one card, like, okay, what, I don't know what this one card should be, you know what I mean? um and sometimes we kind of have to, like, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, you got to keep like trying different pieces until it finally clicks, and then it all makes sense, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Just sometimes I wonder where you get all that creativity from to create a new story and a new mechanic around that, or a different version of a known mechanic. But it's just amazing every month. It's just there's no, I mean, there are no other games out there like LCGs, cooperative LCGs with this format. Actually, at the moment, is the one, because Marvel Champions doesn't have that, and Lord of the Rings is, well, they're not releasing much content lately, but it's amazing. That keeps us completely hooked. So we personally, I hope that business model doesn't change, that we keep getting a story each month to keep us going, to keep us hooked. As you mentioned in the podcast with the great old ones, like a TV series that you want to watch the next episode, you're waiting for it.
Mhm.
So yeah, that kudos for that, because that's amazing
Yeah.
design work, I must say.
Thank you, I really appreciate that.
We really love that kind of design with one package month, but in the other hand, we got a lot of people telling us they cannot fully play a campaign because they don't have the central pack. So
Right.
it's
There's
good.
definitely pros and cons to both, for sure. Absolutely.
Uh,
So one of the big new things in the Innsmouth scenarios were vehicles.
Mm.
So how did this idea come to be, or what do you feel was its reception of this new thingy?
Right. So the idea for the vehicles came definitely because a long time ago, like all the way back in Dunwich, we had scenarios where it would make sense for there to be a vehicle, right? You're driving around town, that sort of thing. And I said, no, we can't do vehicles as player cards, because then you could, like, it would just narratively break certain scenarios. Like, oh, you're just rolling through the museum in your car, right? It just like doesn't make any sense. So I made the decision early on, if we ever did vehicles, it would be in a scenario designed around the fact that you're in a vehicle, right? It wouldn't just be like, here's Tommy's motorcycle just driving around anywhere, because it just wouldn't make sense. You're in a train car or something. And when we got to Innsmouth, I knew I wanted to do a boat scenario. So it just kind of made sense. Like, okay, we have this long-standing deal that at some point we would do vehicles in a scenario, and we have a scenario in which I definitely want to do a boat. So slap them together, and then right after that, in my story outline for Innsmouth, I was like, the investigators travel by car to the lighthouse, and I thought, well, that could be a whole scenario if we use these same vehicle mechanics that we had in the boat scenario and just tweak them a little bit. And I think I said that. I'm trying to remember. I think I said that out loud, and our intern, Duke, who ended up doing a lot of the foundational work on A Light in the Fog, actually, said horror in high gear, and I was like, that's it. That's it.
We
That's
got
the
the name.
scenario. Yep.
That's awesome.
That's another thing. You guys are brilliant with the titles. They are so wow. It's like
Thank
you just see the title. And it's like I want to play this. I don't know
horror in
what
high
it is.
gear. Like
Yeah,
that
well,
itself, that's perfect.
Also, may I say, most of the names from this campaign sound like metal band albums or
Hmm.
or
Hell
hard
yeah.
rock songs or something. It sounds awesome.
Into the maelstrom.
Yeah.
yay.
Yeah.
So, may I ask? You might not be able to respond, but the vehicle concept. Did you thought on this for the cycle, like the same way you think? Okay, the Ismo cycle is gonna have blessed and cursed tokens, and that's something that is gonna be just exclusive for that cycle. Or is it something that you decided that it could be integrated in any cycle potentially? Or was it originally thought, okay, this is something closed for this cycle?
So it's definitely, I mean, we could do vehicles again in the future. There's nothing in the vehicle keyword or there's nothing in the vehicle rules that says like this only makes sense in Innsmouth. We can definitely use it again. That being said, we're always very wary of compounding too many new mechanics on top of one another. I believe pretty strongly that like each campaign should have a few new things and that's it, and like not pull from every previous campaign that we've ever done, because then you'll have a campaign we get to like cycle 8 and then all of a sudden it's got like 16 pages of rules because it's taking from every cycle that we've ever done. So we might go back to it, just like we've come back to like alert, for example. Like we had alert in the Forgotten Age and then we skipped it and then we had it again. So yeah, we might come back to it in the future. It might not be immediately, it might not be ever, who knows. I'm only going to use it again if it makes sense.
Okay.
Totally. Yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah. Why close yourself when that's something that you could use in the future? I
Right.
mean, I can imagine vehicles in many different Lovecraft stories and future cycles, so that would be something.
Can
cool
you
to see.
imagine a plane going through the Antarctica?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we did essentially the same thing with the hidden cards. The hidden cards made a lot of sense for Haster, and then we didn't use them again. And for a while, I thought like, okay, yeah, that was a Haster thing. It's not going to come up again. And then when we started working in the Dream Eaters, I was like, you know what? This actually works a lot for Nyarlathotep. Let's bring the hidden cards back and do them again. So, yeah.
By the way, about that's where the gods dwell. That scenario. Is there any way to tweak that scenario to make it more playable for true solo? Because some of the things that we heard in the community, in the Spanish community at least, is that it feels that the latest cycles maybe did not have so much focus on playing solo, true solo, and that was just an example. Is that the case? Because earlier you mentioned that because of the COVID situation, sometimes you feel that the testers need to test more in solo gaming,
Right.
or in 200 or 300 or 400 if somebody's crazy enough to do that. So is that the case?
I would say that that's an example of one where maybe it slipped through the cracks. And like, no matter what, like I say this often, but like no matter how much attention a scenario or a particular card has gotten in playtesting, the second that it gets released, it's like thousands and thousands times more attention is suddenly on it. So we'll have stuff like the Winchester where it doesn't even say to spend an ammo, and like none of us spotted it, you know. So I think that that's an instance where it was play tested with solo investigators. I played it solo, and I just happened to not have a problem with it. And that doesn't mean that I'm good at the game, because I'm not. But like it just happened to work out that way, where we had feedback and it just wasn't like, it wasn't as prevalent as it is now, where all of a sudden everyone's like, yeah, this is definitely a problem. I think that that's the kind of thing that it's just like some scenarios are just going to be harder in solo and easier in multiplayer. Some scenarios are going to be harder in multiplayer and easier in solo. And it's just like a consideration that you need to make when you're building your deck or when you're choosing what campaign to play.
Absolutely. Actually, it makes total sense. It's tricky to make every scenario scale well
Right.
to the amount, to all amount of players, solo, multi, 2, 3, 4. So that makes total sense. Look at that.
That's a pro for working at home, right?
Do you? No, you want to leave. Okay. Very unhappy. Okay.
About design, how many of the ideas of the suggestions are coming from above? I mean, from management, I guess, or are coming from you guys, from the designers? Because if I remember correctly, the starter decks is something that was suggested from above, and then there are not necessarily.
Kind of yes and no. Like, I would say that nowadays, the design team in general, I have a lot of creative freedom. I generally pitch every new product that we make. The starter decks was a little bit of a collaboration because we had seen there was like a desire to have another entry point into the game. And so it was more of a task that was given to us, like, we want to do something that would allow people to have a new entry point into the game. You decide what that is. And we came up with the idea of the starter decks, and like the exact implementation of how the starter decks would work was pretty much entirely me and Jeremy, with approval from management, right? I would say earlier on, there was a lot more like, this is what you're doing next, and a lot and now that's not really the case at all, I would say. And even back then, it wasn't really like, I never felt like, ugh, I'm doing a thing that I don't want to do. You know what I mean? That was never the case. There's always been collaboration from the beginning with every team, graphic design, art, management. Like, we're all on the same page.
It's great that you are getting more room for the design process and the whole thing. I think that's brilliant. At the end of the day, you guys are the designers. You are kind of the artists creating the game. So I think that's good. That should be you guys who have that power in a way.
I mean, I'm obviously glad. I think it depends on the game, and like the style of game, and the people working on the game. For me, I think generally after a couple of years, they were like, okay, like, they've got this. You know what I mean? Like, MJ's just take the leash off. It'll be fine.
That's good. They trust you. I mean, because you've done an amazing work. For instance, the parallel investigators, was that something that came from you guys?
So that was another very similar, actually. That was another thing that was like, we had a conversation about COVID and about everything that was going on in the world. And we knew that there were going to be product delays. We knew that there were going to be people stuck at home, not able to play with their group. And we wanted to do something for them. We wanted to do something special, maybe something that they could just print out at home and play. And so I was kind of tasked with thinking of ideas of what that could be. And then the parallel investigators was like the fruit of that, right? I and others got together and we communicated as a team and figured out, like, okay, what if we did, a new version of an existing investigator and a little challenge scenario that uses mostly rehashed old content with a couple of new cards that you print out at home. And they loved that idea, so we just, ran with it. Okay. But yeah, it was a little bit of both. It was kind of like a come up with some ideas for how we could accomplish this goal, and we came up with what we thought was the best way of doing that.
Okay.
But it wasn't like, hey, make new investigators. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Will you share one day that Agnes deck you mentioned one day that was all spell events, and because I heard you in an interview and I was thinking I want to see that deck. I definitely want, and that deck, and especially the other deck I want to see is Jeremy's. I think it was Dexter's Dexter curse deck that he mentioned once.
Curse deck, yeah. Dex. So Jeremy likes to stack stats. Jeremy likes to stack stats and play lots of cards. So Jeremy's Dexter deck would just walk around with like 9 willpower and just be like able to handle anything, just because he's stacked completely. Like he'll spend the first like 3 or 4 turns just playing assets, right? And like leaving everything else to us and be like, it's fine, let him do it. He'll be ridiculous at the end of the game. As for my Agnes deck, I would say that I think by now people have there have been others who have posted essentially like that exact same deck. It's just about having a spell card to play every turn, basically, and like having the heirloom out and being able to leverage that card draw into more spells, and you just keep going and going and going and going, and you just draw like by the end of the game you've drawn like your entire deck twice. Yeah.
Okay.
You become Patris.
MJ, I want to hear only one word. Wendy or Roland?
Yes.
Who? That's my answer.
Okay.
Who?
Who?
Is it easier to design a parallel investigator than an? You already have a base, of course, and you need to tweak it. Is it more difficult to start from scratch?
It depends. It really depends. Like, I would say it depends on the investigator. Like some investigators, it's super easy. It just comes naturally. It's like, what is this investigator like? Daisy, I would say that design came pretty naturally because it was like, well, what's an aspect of deck building that she would love to have that changes things completely? Tomes, okay, did it. Like that sort of thing. Whereas other investigators took a bit more time to figure out, like, all right, how can we take this investigator in a brand new direction, but it still feels like them? And I would say that like Skids is that kind of investigator where it's like totally different. Like parallel Skids is very different from original Skids, but they still both feel like Skids, and that's like a tricky thing to do. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think in general it's not as easy as I think people might expect. Yeah.
I imagine there's also a challenge to make both parts being able to interact with the old investigator.
Right. Yeah. One of the things, it's really important to me that each side, it's not just like here's the new side and the new side works only well with the new front side or the new back side. It's like I want them to be mix and matchable very well. I personally love how like Agnes and Daisy and Skids all worked out in that way where it's like parallel. If you have like parallel Daisy front side and original Daisy backside, that feels very different from the reverse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying a Skids deck with the new front side and the previous backside, but working with spirit cards from the Nathaniel Cho pack, and the boxing gloves, and the bandolier, and the bow. So it didn't work that well, but it's fine.
That's fine.
It's fun.
I mean, when it worked, it really worked.
As well as Sister Mary with the shotgun.
Yeah, I'm loving Sister Mary with her shotgun.
Okay.
Nice.
So in the same vein, the scenarios are sort of the same process from the investigators. Like, how do you choose which scenario to build from for the challenge scenario?
So sometimes for the scenario, it kind of comes naturally based on who the investigator is. Like, for example, for Agnes, I knew I wanted to use Threads of Fate all the way from the very beginning because it's the only scenario where Velma's Diner exists as a card, as a location that you can like visit. So I was like, okay, well, it has to be Threads of Fate. And then it was a matter of like figuring out what can we do with Threads of Fate that is totally different or totally new. Same thing with Skids. Like Skids, it was like, okay, it's got to be the Clover Club. Like it can't possibly be anything else. And there's definitely a list of, possible, like this scenario fits this investigator really well and so on and so forth, that I'm sure even you would be able to like immediately like, okay. Everyone else, it's a bit tougher, right? When you get beyond that and you get to investigators who don't have like a home base, you know what I mean, within Arkham. Especially when you get to the scenarios that don't take place in Arkham, when like all of our investigators are Arkham based, so that'll be tricky too. But I feel confident that we can find a way to do that well without ever like duplicating a scenario.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's something that we were wondering. All three so far have been using locations that are in Arkham, and there's a maximum a max of locations that you can keep using without being repetitive, I guess. So,
Right.
so that's a big challenge. I can't wait to see it. Honestly, I cannot wait to see that.
Luckily, we do have a few characters who like are well traveled themselves.
Yeah,
like Jenny, Lola, etc. So, who knows?
Okay.
I'm not being cheeky. I literally don't know. I have not gotten that far.
if my friend Matastrophic hears just the word Lola, because
Right.
he's obsessed with he lives here in Edinburgh. We are in the same group, so we play together quite often. He's obsessed. I know every time he has the chance, he will ask you about Lola.
I love Lola.
Yeah, actually, we were wondering, will we see more neutral characters at some point? We've always been hinting like Charlie Kane could be a neutral character, being a politician. He could fit in all ways. Like we never know, of course. I know you can't say anything about it, but we hope there will be more because Lola is such a different investigator to play with. Right.
About Nick. About Nick, Egoitz. About Nick.
About Nick Cage. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Well, we
So
have
the podcast is kind of a big fan of Nicolas Cage.
Okay.
for some reason.
I think I'm at fault for that, but I take it. I love it.
Yeah. So if you think of Nick Cage, what class of investigator do you think he could be, or if he would be an ally, into which class would you put him in?
Okay, so I think that he would be neutral, and I think that he would be able to play cards from any class, and they'd all be different roles. And maybe let's say like every turn he could pick a role, and like that's the class that he can play from.
How?
Sounds familiar.
Right? Well, he is the actor, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's a gender swap of Lola.
There you go.
So Nicolas Cage is the parallel investigator for Lola.
Right.
Oh,
Yes.
Can we confirm that?
Great.
There you go. You got it.
Great. I'm opening the Photoshop. Sorry.
We have some questions about post design, like taboo list. We don't want to go much into it because you've already in that article that you guys wrote with the latest taboo list. I think you explained a lot, more than ever, the reasons why, and I think that was brilliant. Have that insight from you guys of why you were doing this or banning a card that was never seen before. And without of course spoiling anything, did you realize when a cycle, when the scenarios are starting to get released and you see the feedback from the players of the community, and when as you said earlier, sometimes when you do the testing, there might be, I don't know, 10 pair of eyes or 20 pair of eyes, but then when those are released, there's the whole community is looking at it, that they can see different interactions, different combos. Do you see, based on those reactions, do you see cards that immediately go under your radar to potentially go or join the taboo list?
Yes, but it's not as simple as just saying like this card's too good, so it goes on the taboo list. It's more like we need to both have an idea of which cards to put on and also what to do with them before they'll go on a taboo list. There's a couple cards that I know I'd love to put on the taboo list, but we haven't yet thought of like a good solution for like what to do with them. So they're not on there. So it's not always just like, yep, this card is on my radar, so next taboo list it'll definitely be on it. We also, because it's not just a matter of also like there's a lot of steps. Like we also have to playtest the new versions and give enough time for playtesting that our playtesters can get behind the changes or explain why they don't like them or why they're not working. So yeah, it's a much longer process than I think people might assume. You know what I mean? Which pretty much can be said for almost everything that we do.
Oh, yeah, it must be, and each time as time passes, I guess it must be more difficult because you have more
Right.
cards to compare against. So
Yeah.
as the pool increases, there are more possible combinations that you need to take into consideration.
Yeah, and there's also a consideration of we don't ever want it to get too bloated. We don't ever want it to get too long, where the list is just like impossible to have memorized or impossible to print out or whatever. Like we don't want to get to the point where it's like 6 pages long and it's ridiculous. If this were like a digital game, that would be one thing because we could just snap our fingers and the cards are changed, right? Not that that's like an easier process. That obviously a lot of thought still goes into it, but we would be able to do more bigger, wider patch notes with taboo list and with errata. It's got to be really laser focused. Like we can't just do every single card that we want to. We have to decide like, okay, here are the cards we want to do, and the rest of these, they're fine. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's great also how it keeps evolving, and cards that were modified can be modified again. I think that's brilliant. The fact that it's alive, they can change depending on the new interactions and depending on the power creep. Some cards will make sense to reduce that nerfing. So I think I personally play with the taboo list always. I know in Spain it's not that popular. I understand that, especially for for new players, it's good to just forget about it.
For sure.
At the beginning, and get to learn all the cards, and then at some point, if you feel that one is overpowered, then you can decide to play without it or to go into the taboo list. So I think it's great that it exists, and I think it's great that it's optional. I imagine that cards like Double or Nothing were limiting your design process because it could potentially create such crazy combos that were really limiting you. So I think banning is just a measure to control that.
Yeah. And if there's ever a card that is making it difficult for me to design new cards, then that's like immediately out the window.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. You're gonna make your life more difficult, or
Right? Yeah.
All the careful development is actually really appreciated with the astounding amount of cards that we already have. It's really surprising that the game just doesn't break.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had some like foundational things right from the beginning, like the 3 actions, for example, that really helps with that. And just the way that the game runs, you know what I mean? It's designed to sort of limit that kind of like infinite combos or anything like that. Obviously, sometimes it can still happen, and then we take our giant hammer and we crush it. But yeah, we try to avoid that from the get-go.
Okay.
If you will have to say from the player point of view, what do you think is the sweet spot in the amount of players in a game? Solo, 2 players, maybe multi. Personally, my preference is 3. I like 3 because you can have one focused on one thing, another one focused on a different thing, and then one flex in between. In your point of view, what would be the maybe if not the sweet spots, because that depends on the scenario, of course, on the campaign. But what is your preferred way of playing?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think 3 is like a really good number. I think I mean, one of the greatest things about this game obviously is that it works pretty well no matter what, no matter how many players you play with. It's a different feeling. When you're playing by yourself and you have to control every facet of the game, it can be, and it goes really quickly, which is a good thing, but it can also be pretty burdensome. If you're playing with like 3 or 4 people, that opens up a bit and you can kind of focus on only your nugget of gameplay, right? Your little thing that your world that you're doing, which is nice. But it obviously takes a lot longer to play and a lot longer to organize, right? Sometimes, especially in this day and age, it's kind of hard to get 4 people together unless you're playing online over Zoom or something. So I 3 is a really good number because, like you said, you can specialize, but you don't have to specialize. And you have a lot of player interaction, but also the game doesn't go on quite as long as it would with 4. So I like 3. I tend to play 4-player the most, though, for sure. Yeah.
So I think, well, we had a question before. We kind of jump over it. Quick question, just how many people have sent you pictures of their pets in hopes of getting them into a possible Barkham scenario? Full disclaimer, I'm just asking because I did so and I wanted to check how dire the competition is.
Actually, all of the Barkham pups and all the Barkham cats were employees, or employee pets. We actually did like a big folder where all of the employees sent pictures of their pets in, and were able to like get their pets somewhere in the set. So, for example, like the 2 capricious twins, the enemy, that's actually Tyler Parrott's 2 cats. Bark Harrigan is Molly Glover, our producer, who is also Olive McBride. So yeah, it's just one big like, yeah, who's who of who's a pet of who's an FFG employee.
I wonder who Tristan Botley is.
Well, Tristan Bodley is Evan Johnson.
Of course, yeah.
Our own marketing. Yep. And his dog's name in real life is Vito. So the flavor text is like him talking to his dog. Yeah,
that's awesome.
It was so evident when we saw the card. It was like, that's Evan Johnson. That's
Evan.
Because I mean, maybe the other people that works at FFG, we don't see their faces as much as Jeremy, yourself, or Evan, or maybe Katrina. But Evan was so evident. It was like, yeah, that's him, definitely.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I have not gotten a lot of pictures of pets from customers.
So you're telling me there's a chance,
right? Yeah, you have competition, but the competition's coming from inside the office.
I have to do something about it.
Right.
So how often do you go back to that folder full of pictures of pets? Because that must be glorious.
I have multiple sources of pet photos, including multiple Discord channels, including my own. Many ways that I can get cats and dogs in my life. So
there's never enough.
Right, exactly. So the internet was made for.
Yeah.
You want to continue with design questions? I think we got a couple more.
Yeah, we could talk about which cycle have you enjoyed the most designing, and which one have you enjoyed the most while playing it?
And which one would be the most difficult one to design? Well, that's 3 questions in one.
Well, okay, so I think the one that I had the most fun designing was the Dream Eaters. Mostly because I thought that the setting lent itself to having fun while making it, because it's just so wacky, and like the places are cool and wondrous, and like the flavor is more whimsical. You get to a certain point where you can only describe the fear of death so many times as a writer before it is like, okay, yeah, it's scary. But with the Dream Eaters, I was really able to break free of that and do like you know, the Black Cat being a witty jerk, and like Nyarlathotep being really schemy and manipulative, and like lots of cool stuff that I don't get to do very often. So I think that's the one I had the most fun designing. Playing, I think I would say, I don't know. That's tough because I don't really get to play that often. I'm almost always playing when I'm playtesting.
And
I
of
think
course, you already know the story.
right. Yeah, exactly. I'm never gonna experience the story from scratch, right? Like everyone else does. It's tough to know how that's gonna go because I never get that experience. I think the one that I've had the most fun playing might be Innsmouth for that exact reason. Where Innsmouth is the one where I had someone else designing multiple scenarios. Jeremy designed 2 of the scenarios. Our intern Duke did like the foundational design for one of the scenarios. So sitting down and playing those scenarios was actually like, oh, I get to play Arkham. Like I get to actually play Arkham. You know what I mean?
This is a first.
Right. Of course, the same was true for the Dream Eaters. We had Daniel Schaefer did 2 of the scenarios in the Dream Eaters as well, and it was the same kind of thing. Yeah. And as for the last thing you said, what was it?
Which is more difficult.
Oh, the most difficult? I would say definitely the content that is after Innsmouth that I can't tell you about.
Okay, cool.
That was definitely the hardest one to design so far.
Now I want to know.
Right? Yeah, I know.
Actually, I was thinking about Innsmouth. One of the things I've noticed is that the maps in Innsmouth, in most of the scenarios, they have the way the locations are put into play. It opens up a lot of replayability because the map is not static, so it will change, and especially the first scenario. I think the second one, the map is static, but there is some randomness in who done it, and the third one it's
order in which they appear in the second one.
Yes, but it feels that there is way more replayability for some reason than with other cycles, because just the way the scenarios come up, it can be completely different. So that's actually, I think, very good for a game where after you have played a scenario, the narrative part will become secondary because you already know the story and you will focus more on the puzzle, the mechanic, the scenario itself. So that was actually quite cool.
Awesome. Yeah, it's very important to us that your 5th playthrough of a scenario feels still fun and not like, like static, like, all right, I've already done this. And sometimes we try to achieve that replayability in different ways. Obviously, the map is one, but also like the locations of the keys, and also like for Innsmouth in particular, I suspect that most groups are not going to get every flashback. In fact, most groups aren't even going to get, I think, half of the flashbacks, right? Hopefully, if I've done my job right.
Okay.
So experiencing different aspects of the story by experiencing different flashbacks every time you play, I think will also add to the replayability of like the campaign as a whole, hopefully.
Oh, that monster, how is it? The Terror from the Deep? Is that the name?
Which one?
That monster, that enemy,
the Terror of Devil's Reef.
Oh yeah, that's evil. If you haven't done certain thing, it becomes so tricky. Right. And if you have to choose a scenario that you are most proud of, that the one you said, wow, I think this is so it's so round, so perfect. I don't have any way of polishing it. I mean,
Of the released ones.
Right. That's tough. So I think it's all right. So it's not so much that I'm proud of it in that I know it's perfect and can't possibly be improved upon, because that's impossible. Like every scenario could be improved upon given enough time. But I think the idea that I'm most proud of is the spoilers for the end of the Dream Eaters. The a giant spider boss.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was when that came together, I literally ran, like I drew what you see, right? A giant spider with 8 legs on like across multiple cards, and I carried it to my boss's office and I like slammed it on the desk and I'm like, take a look at this. This is so cool. I was so excited. And yeah, I pushed for that so hard. I like went to the art department. I'm like, can we do this? Can we get one piece of art that is smattered across multiple cards? I ran to graphic design. I'm like, can we do like upside down enemy templates? And like, it was a whole thing, but everyone was super on board with it. And it ended up being, I think, like the most memorable boss fight that we've done in the game.
Totally, because the enemy itself it's composed by different cards, and the way it moves, and it's such a different approach. Yeah. It's amazing. It's brilliant. Actually, I've seen a fan made scenario where you have Atlas Nacta in the middle of Venice, interacting with.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is it the same number of locations?
I
remember.
believe so.
It might be.
I can't
That's
remember.
awesome. If so,
I need to ask. Yeah, I need to ask Matt. Matastrophic is the one who designed it. I need to ask him. All right. If you had to choose an enemy that you hate most,
that I hate most.
Yeah, and why? Yeah.
The hunter swarm enemy.
Just any old hunter swarm enemy.
Yeah.
I think it might actually be the deep one, the young deep one from Innsmouth, because I like Trish.
Yeah.
That thing is just like the anti-Trish enemy. I don't know what it is. It's just like here's Trish and here's the enemy that kills her.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Continue with short questions.
Short questions like pam pam pam.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, easy ones. Like okay, this one is from another of our Patreons. Who would win a martial arts fight, Nathaniel Cho or Lily Chen? Without magic.
I think it would be a draw. I think it would have to be a draw because I'm unwilling to anger either fans of either investigator.
We have many people waiting to see Lily Chen in the game because it's such a loved character from other games from the Arkham Files, Eldritch, and so on, and people is really waiting.
My favorite, yeah.
I hope one day we have the chance to travel to Asia and see different environments.
The role game Call of Cthulhu visited Asia several times with a lot of fan guides, Shanghai, Japan. There's a lot of material to make it great.
I agree.
Hopefully one day.
Hopefully.
Okay, what else do we have here? I've got a couple of questions. You did design fanmates when you started for Lord of the Rings and so on. Do you usually play any fanmate made by the community?
Typically, no. As a policy, it's not because I don't want to. I would love to actually sit down and play all of them because, like I said, I would finally get to actually play Arkham. You know what I mean? From scratch, like with not knowing what to expect. But as a policy, I try not to. I try to avoid it, and the reason is I don't want to accidentally like take someone's design or use something or do something that's similar to what someone's done. That way they know and I know that everything that I come up with is original, and I'm not like, oh, that's a cool idea, I'm going to do what they did. You know what I mean? So if that's my policy, then they know that they're if we ever do come up with like the same idea or a similar idea, it's just great minds thinking alike, or something like that. Yeah. But maybe at some point, maybe at some point I'll get the chance to finally go back and like play everything. That'd be really cool.
I've been playing lately Alice in Wonderland, and I'm
Mm.
surprised of how well designed it is, or how much time they spend creating that scenario. It's really good.
I would definitely love to check that out. I also would love to check out the Kaimonogatari series, because that's one of my favorite animes. So that's really cool. Yeah, I do have to say, like, I'm so happy and so impressed with everybody who does custom content for the game. I think it's great for the community. I think it's great for new players, because they can open up the box and suddenly have this wealth of additional content that they can print out and play at home. And I hope everybody keeps doing it. I think it's fantastic for the game. It's really healthy.
Definitely. I'm going to ask you about the Arkham Knights. For the blob, the scenario, we had a chance to play it in Spain during the Arkham Knights. That year, instead of playing it in the UK, I went down to Madrid, and we had the chance to play it. I think it was 152 investigators, which it felt huge. I mean,
That is huge.
do you know of any epic multiplayer that had that amount of investigators?
I know that there was the blobbing around the world one.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people were in that one. I think it was 100 plus, but I don't remember if it was 152. That's the largest I remember ever seeing.
Yeah, I played that one, and I don't think there was that many.
I don't know.
But
152 is enormous, though. Oh my god,
it was amazing, and
that's so cool.
It's a shame that it was cancelled this year, because I think it would have been pretty much the same amount or even more, because everybody was waiting. People in the Spanish community, people have been talking about that game since then, and everybody was looking forward to play an epic multiplayer physically like that.
Yeah, I'm sad that we didn't get to do that for War of the Outer Gods, because that was also designed. Because again, we worked so far ahead of time that, War of the Outer Gods was fully designed long before quarantine ever happened. So we were really upset that, like, we couldn't, give it justice the way that it should have. So I hope that when everything goes back to normal and people can meet up again, we can do like a big 120, 150 person War of the Outer Gods. I think that'd be awesome. That scenario is so good in epic multiplayer, and I don't think that people have really gotten to experience it the way it was meant to be experienced.
We've played it recently. It was in December, I think. It was 90 something people, if I remember
that's great.
correctly.
Oh, awesome. I
it-
wasn't aware that it had quite that many people playing it.
Yeah, it was. I think it was pretty much the same group that organized the blobbing around the world. So it was warring around the world.
Warring around the world.
Yeah. But yeah, it was actually quite cool to play like that. We are organizing one for the Spanish community for the 20th of March. So yeah, I don't know how many people is gonna join, but the Discord server already has like 80 or 90 people.
Nice. That's so cool.
Yeah, hopefully it will be big. And
I'm jealous. I want to play.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Sign up in the shadow
Feel free to
account.
join. And to this day, the blob game we played in the game on Madrid still remains one of our fondest memories playing the game.
Nice.
We beat the boss in like the last 10 seconds in the clock, something like that.
Yeah,
It was insane.
It happened a lot with Blob. Yeah, it's really it's always really close. It's never like a complete blowout. It's always like within the last 10 minutes or something.
Yeah, it's just you start playing and you just play like normal, and then someone says 15 minutes remaining.
Right.
Then you start all playing at the same time, pulling tokens from the bag at the same time.
Right.
Oh,
It's awesome.
It was epic because the blob ate the chairs. So everybody had to be standing. So that added even more tension to the situation. Come on, go. Play simultaneously. No, you cannot play simultaneously. But it doesn't matter.
I don't care.
Just do it. Just keep going. People couldn't go to the toilet because the blob ate the toilet. It was just everybody had to be there and focused. It was amazing. As soon as it finished, everybody started clapping. It was like a feeling of achievement. Like, hey, we did it all together. It was great, honestly.
We could go to the toilet.
Definitely.
Rejoice.
We will love to go to the Arkham Nights in the US just to have the chance of sitting on your table and playing the keeper.
If you ever do make it, I know it's not easy, and it's definitely like harder now than it used to be.
Totally.
But if you ever do get the chance, I would love to run that for you, for sure.
That would be amazing. Do you think is there a special set of rules for that that you follow? Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, the keeper is like a new kind of role that has their own like hand of cards and their own resources and stuff. And there's some additional rules that they have to follow. But yeah, we kind of just did that on a whim for that year just to see if we could really. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
I guess because people like suffering, so
yeah, exactly. It was designed to be by far like the hardest experience in Arkham. You know what I mean?
Cool. We
Expert
hope
plus plus.
Yeah.
Right.
Those rules have never been shared or anything. Something that you keep secret, like secret ingredient. Good.
The idea was, I mean, this might not stay this way forever. Who knows what will happen in the future? But the original idea, the concept was, I wanted it to remain a secret, not like a secret, like obviously you know about it, right? But I wanted the contents of it and the way that it works to remain a secret. That way, and you only ever play it against a developer, like against me or against Jeremy. And the reason for that was that way you'd never know what to expect because you don't have the whole thing memorized, right? You've never seen it before. And B, it really does feel like you're playing against the game. You're playing against the developer because you literally are. I mean, obviously, it would be cool to make it a product. Who knows if that'll ever happen or not? But I'm very glad that it is the way it is right now.
It's your baby.
Special.
Your chance to be ultra evil with and throw them all. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Should we move to different subjects, more about other projects? Would that be okay?
Sure. Yeah.
I have played Marvel Champions with Black Widow. I know you were behind the design. Is this something you enjoyed and you would love to do more often? If you had a chance, because I imagine they want you to be working in Arkham and so on.
Right. Yeah. Now, obviously, we're very busy, so it's not always something that we can do. But I kind of alluded to this before when I was talking about the office environment, but all of our game lines are very collaborative. There's not a single product that we work on that doesn't get attention from the other developers in some way, shape, or form, right? When they did Legend of the Five Rings, I actually worked on the Phoenix clan because the Phoenix clan are my favorite clan in Legend of the Five Rings. When we did Conquest, people were helping each other with different factions in Conquest because everyone has their own opinions, and it can be really healthy for a game to draw in opinions and attention from other developers for various reasons. And the same is true for Arkham. We've had Daniel Schaefer working on scenarios. We've had different developers touching different investigators. It's like their favorite investigator or something, they might chime in and have ideas. Brad Andrews was instrumental in the Blob That Ate Everything scenario. It was almost entirely like the concept was almost entirely his. He told me like, let's do a giant blob. And I was like, all right. So yeah, that's kind of how it went with Marvel. We're always encouraged to help each other out. And with Marvel, it was very much like there was a lot of work to get done right in the beginning. There was like a lot of characters that needed to get done. So I basically was like, I'll take Black Widow. Like, just give me Black Widow. I'll do it. And that's pretty much what happened. They were happy to let me work on Black Widow. I was really lucky to be able to do that because she's one of my favorite characters in the setting. they took the ideas that I wrote down and really ran with it. I mean, honestly, I would say I only maybe did like 40 to 50% of the work, and they did the rest. So it's not entirely true to say that like Black Widow is just like my design. It was definitely like a collaborative effort, like it usually is.
Totally. It's actually quite cool. I'm not an expert. I haven't played that much Marvel Champions, but I have played with Black Window, like my youngest son called Black Window. he
Right.
calls Darth Vader Dark Vader.
Dark
Like, well, it's Darth.
Well,
Darth Vader. He says, but he's dark. Yeah, he's dark. Anyway, he's 4-year-old. So yeah, I really hope to see you in other projects. Like I don't know, have you ever thought on maybe designing a conventional board game, perhaps, or a different kind of game, something away from the LCG or the card games that you currently design?
I would love to branch out and do more. I think my specialty lies in card games and or narrative games. I before I joined the company, I used to always think that RPGs would be my primary. Like I played a lot of I probably played more RPGs than I did board games before I got hired. But I would say now, over 8 years of designing cooperative LCGs, that I'm definitely like known as the cooperative LCG person in my department, me and Caleb. But yeah, so I would love to do more. It's just a matter of like finding that time.
Yeah.
Clone me, you know what I mean? Then we'll see. Right. I certainly could not work on like a brand new game while also working on Arkham. That I would not have time for that.
Too much.
Yeah, that would be too much. That's the reason why. I mean, that's basically the reason why after the core set, it was just me, because Nate went on to work on Legend of the Five Rings after that.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there's so much overlap timing schedule wise that pretty much from that moment forward, it was Nate was pretty hands off because he was too busy with Legend of the Five Rings to possibly work on both at the same time. And I'm sure the same would be true for me if I ever did a new game or something. Who knows?
That's it. Being in Arkham hasn't stopped you from doing your own things. Like
that is true.
We've seen a lot of posts lately about in your blog in Beware the Black Cat about maybe where you take inspirations from video games, or what's your process in designing a scenario. What is your favorite side project, I guess? Because you've also been streaming occasionally, I guess.
Yeah, I actually want to stream more, but I'm kind of lazy. And I often find myself thinking like, I should really stream today. And then like 2 hours later, I'll be like, no, I'm tired. I don't want to. But I definitely want to stream more. I mean, my favorite, obviously it has to be my novel. That was really a passion project for me. And kind of like almost like me proving to myself that I can write long form fiction. Because Arkham is very different to write for. It's second person present tense, which feels weird, and it's like it's very, you have to deliver a lot of information in a pretty short amount of time, like a handful of paragraphs, and you have to get kind of like from point A to point B while also still evoking certain emotions, right? It can't just be like you walk down the street and now you're here. So it's very different to write for. And I hadn't written any sort of long form fiction in a long, long time, since high school, really. So, and I had a lot of like emotions going on when I was writing it. So it was, it kind of just happened. I didn't plan it. It just kind of happened. It flowed right out of me. But
that was actually going to be the next question. Like,
right.
How did this project came to be? But of course.
Yeah. Well, so to be a little bit more exact, it was two different projects that combined. And actually, if you've read the book, it would make a lot of sense. Because basically it was, I wrote like a character short, which is to say like a short story based around one character's like bio almost, which eventually turned into the first chapter of the main character's story, Poppy, where it's just like the girl in the attic was what I called it, and it was all about Poppy's life and her trials and her tribulations and how she gets through it with video games and stuff like that. And it didn't really have anything to do with the broader picture of what the book turned into until I started thinking more about it and finding ways to fit that in. The other part was the story of this other character, Penelope, who largely was mirroring my own thoughts and my own anxieties. And so that character kind of was me at first. It's not anymore, obviously. That character took on a shape of their own. But in the end, I just kept writing, and the two ideas sort of merged into one cohesive story that I hope people like. Yeah, please check it out.
and there is room for a sequel.
Oh, for sure. Yes. Yeah, I have actually started working on it already. So
yeah, you created kind of a universe or your own environment where you can develop more some of those characters or other characters.
Yeah, I would love to. I honestly intend for it to be a longer series. Who knows how much time I'll have to actually write it. But it would be really cool. It's kind of my personal. If Arkham is like my day job, then Dark Drifters is like my my night hobby. Does that sound? That's not even a word. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, look, there it is.
Go everyone, go get it. Everyone.
Hell yeah.
Oh,
yay.
You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles. You can get it on my personal website, www.bewaretheblackcat.com. Check it out.
okay.
It's cool.
That blog is brilliant. And there's going to be a third part of your video game series, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because we were following the chronologically, and okay, there's more coming. The most modern video games, of course. Nice.
Right, the ones that are actually I worry about spoiling.
Okay.
We noticed a certain darker aesthetic in most of the games, like Dark Souls.
Yeah, like I told you, I like horror.
Yeah, I can see that. So, not to spoil any of the games that will come in the third article, but what have you been playing lately?
I've been playing a lot lately, actually. So I'm big into RPGs. The Persona series is one of my favorite series. So Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal are games that I need to keep playing. I haven't finished Royal. It's really long. I play a lot of Destiny. Destiny is one of my favorite games. So Destiny 2, like I've been playing Destiny 2 for years, or Destiny, the franchise for years, like since Alpha. I also recently got into Apex, which is like first-person shooter battle royale. Just because a couple of my friends play it, and they sort of like insisted that I join them.
That happens a lot.
Right, yeah. And League of Legends and similar kind of like competitive, like really hardcore competitive games. I used to play a lot of MMOs, but I've kind of fallen off of MMOs lately because I just don't have the time. Like, ain't nobody got time for that. Yeah. What else? Oh, Hades. Oh my God, Hades. Oh my God, Hades.
It's wonderful.
It's so good. I probably played that game for like 120 hours.
And every time you just learn something new, the dialogue changes. It's great.
Yeah. It's also like, I'm kind of sad that like people who buy it and play it now won't get the early access experience. One of the things that they did with Hades that I've never seen before is they actually like worked the early access like time period into the narrative of the game, where like you would get to the end of an area and be like, nope, sorry, you can't proceed any further because there's underworld renovations going on. And then you'd go back and then Hades would comment on the fact that there's renovations going on. And like, who does that? Like they recorded dozens and dozens of lines of dialogue about the early access period. It's like, it's crazy. I've never seen that before, you know?
Mhm.
That's Supergiant Games. They do
Yeah.
their own stuff.
Yeah, everything that they've ever done is fantastic. Every single game that they work on is like a miracle.
Since the beginning, Bastion is wonderful too.
Bastion's fantastic. Transistor is one of my favorite gaming experiences of all time.
Absolutely.
Pyre is just ridiculously fun and has so much narrative. Oh my god.
Yeah, in a
They're
game
all
about like spirit football, you wouldn't expect that much.
right.
Much
Yeah,
narrative.
fantasy like I don't want to say fantasy football because that has a different connotation, but
Yeah.
like it's so cool.
Might I suggest, have you looked into Spiritfarer?
I have. Actually, I have a couple of friends who've played Spiritfarer. I want to play it. I just haven't had the time, which is a common
leave it at that.
recurring theme. Yeah. No, I definitely want to try that. I also have, there's a couple other games that I have on my wish list that I have yet to try. Yeah. That game looks really fun, and you can hug people. Like, it's adorable.
Yeah, it's really
Any
wholesome.
game where hugging people as a mechanic is a game that I enjoy.
Okay, I think we're gonna make MJ a couple questions more. I don't want this to be so long because Alfred has to add the subtitles to the video, so I don't want him to kill us. So, go it. Couple questions more.
I don't have many more questions, really. I have actually one that, start with a name. Start with a name. Andy is one of the guys that creates many amazing decks in Arkham DB. He lives here in Edinburgh, and he asked me, ask MJ, when are we going to have a Guardian Patreon?
Probably never.
Probably never.
Yeah, it was I think I gave like a cheeky answer to this question all the way back in 2018 or so when Carcosa was just coming out, but it was like it's possible that there was a Guardian patron at one point who got scrapped. It's also possible that we just decided that Guardians wouldn't have a patron because they're the one class that can handle it. They don't need it. They don't need a person behind the scenes being like, here's support. It's like they've got it. It's possible that both are true. It's possible that neither are true, and I won't say which.
Nice. I don't have any more questions, really. Do you guys have any other question?
No.
Couldn't say really.
Okay.
So
Yes,
questions here.
Right.
We got a lot. We got a lot.
Yeah, and we had way more that we decided to rule out because some of them were asking questions about future. Most of our Patreons were asking, hey, when are we gonna see Cthulhu? Whatever, classic questions. But those.
I wish I could say more. I wish I could spoil a bunch of stuff right now. Obviously, no one wants to spoil stuff more than I do. But I can't. So.
Of course, let me ask you one thing. I think where we are at, and that's something that we were talking with Vase Odin last week. It seems that we are in one of the peaks of the game. It seems that it's very popular. There's many people joining, probably because the game is great, and the starter decks is a new approach, a new entryway. Do you see Arkham going far? I mean, being an IP that it's owned by Fantasy Flight and the characters and everything around it, not having to pay a license is something that we could see. I mean, going for a long time.
Right.
Do you feel that it's gonna be like that we're not even halfway through? I don't know.
So I will say two things. One, I hope so, right? I hope so. I hope it just keeps going. I think that as long as the game keeps doing well, it will continue. I don't see that, stopping anytime soon. And I also think that my goal is to have that feeling of we feel like we're in the game's golden age, to just always be the case, right?
Cool.
Just like never goes away, right? Like I don't want there to ever feel like there's a drop off. That being said, all good things do have to eventually come to an end. This game's not going to exist in 400 years.
Definitely.
So at some point, I'm sure there will be a drop off. More new games will come out and people will start playing those. And that's just the nature of the industry. That's every card game ever made, with maybe like the sole exception of Magic the Gathering, which just keeps going on and on and on. But who knows? I mean, maybe Arkham will go the distance, like you say, and keep going for decades, and I won't outlive it. You know what I mean? I have no idea. That idea excites me. But it's already gone on for so long. Like it's doing so well. I think it's gone on longer than anyone could have possibly anticipated. You know what I mean? From its inception.
Wow,
And
great
Lord of the
news.
Rings too. Lord of the Rings has been going on for 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's still, sales are still strong. I think cooperative LCGs have a really strong place in the industry. It's so easy to get into them. You don't have to worry about like picking up every single product in order to remain competitive. There's a lot of pros to the approach. And I hope that yeah. I hope it goes on as long as you hope it goes on.
Well, I think it was a brilliant response. Just when you said that, I hope people feels that we are in the golden peak of the game always. That's
Right.
a perfect response. And I truly believe that as long as you are designing it, we will be. So because we have
Thank
total
you.
trust in you. Yeah, I think it's
No pressure. No
I think
pressure.
Wait, no pressure though, yeah.
I think it's
Hey,
a good way
I
to.
will peak at some point, okay? At some point I will peak.
Okay. I think this is the great end for the interview. Don't you think that?
Yeah, I think it's a good ending for the interview. It's been an absolute delight to have you with us.
Thank you.
Andy.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'm really glad that we were able to do this. I know it's difficult with the time difference and everything, and the language barrier. So I'm really happy that I was able to appear and answer your questions. I hope we can do it again.
Good thing you could understand us. So
Yeah.
it's not Well, thanks a lot, and thanks again for everything, and kudos for the great work, the whole design team. So
Thank you.
keep up the good work.
I will pass along all of your compliments to the deserved parties.
And we hope to go there to the Arkham Knights US one day. David, we talked about that. In the past.
Or I will come to Spain. One or the other.
Perfect.
That could work.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
management. Can you send me to Spain? I just want to go to Spain.
Okay.
No reason.
Yeah, no reason. No, that's fine.
Fantasy Flight should have taken you to Mount Saint Michel when you were designing them. Yes, you have done.
Absolutely.
That's my boss.
Okay. I want to thank Ulysses and Alfred. They are members of Los Archivos de Arkham, but they are not here. Thank to them also for the great work they do every day. And I have to thank also our top tier patrons on the Patreon, Negoing, Rafa Cerrato, Rafa H, Raúl Amarilla, and Tony Cabeza. Thank them. We can do this better every day. Thank you, MJ. It's been a pleasure talk with you for a long time. We hope to see you soon. And
absolutely. And thank you for bringing this game to this amazing community.
We try to do it in a good way. Yeah.
Yeah, the Spanish community is huge. It's so into the game. So
yeah.
I'm sure that they're gonna love this interview. So thanks again.
And not only Spanish, Latin American is it's growing. Right. The community is growing every day. We have listeners from Peru, Chile, Argentina.
That's awesome.
Mexico.
Yeah, Mexico. Adrian,
even
sorry.
in the Spanish speakers in the US as well. So
yeah. I suddenly wish that my mom had taught me Spanish.
You have a Spanish roots. Oh.
Yeah. I'm half Cuban, and my mom is Cuban. Fresh off the boat, right? And she offered to teach me Spanish when I was a kid, and I said no.
No. MJ, please.
I know I should have. Oh,
That's
well.
what my kids tell me, so I'm gonna tell them what you're saying.
Yes,
You need-
yes.
You need to learn it.
Language is like the most important skill you can learn,
Mhm.
like by far. Learn 2 or 3 if you can.
Okay.
Learn at least one.
Well, thank you, MJ. Thank you, Goit. Thank you, Pepper. Thank you, all the listeners. We'll see you at episode number 11.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. See you next time.